So when you do that repetitively, the weight of your neck or the weight of your head is going to start to reform that curve and start to cause this pressure. But in most cases, it's been from some kind of acute trauma. In most of those cases, it's usually some kind of a car accident where your head has been whiplashed, okay? And it takes only about a 5-mile-an-hour car accident or car crash to cause this acute trauma, to cause enough of a whiplash that it straightens your neck, and now you don't have that curvature that's so vital. Now, we have a lot of patients will come into the office and say, well, you know what, Dr. Kingston, I haven't been in any car accidents. I haven't had any of these major traumas and stuff. So what I like to do is, I won't show it for sake of time, but you see these two girls in the swing. Well, if you've ever watched America's Funniest Home Videos, you watch some of these things and see what happens. You know, people are on rope swings, slamming into trees. They've fallen off of these swings. They're landing on their head. All of these things that have happened to us throughout our life, you know. People have hay bales fall on their head, or they slip on the ice and they land on their rear end and their head whiplashes back really hard. And usually there's been some kind of this trauma in their life that has kind of started this. Now, in some cases, that trauma actually happened at birth, because the birth process can be so traumatic sometimes, where people are in C-sections, they were C-sections, or there was suction, there were forceps used, there were things like this that caused so much pressure and pull on their spinal cord, or on their neck and on their head, that when the head got set back, it just didn't quite get set right, so that this curvatures and things never developed in those people. And so they were more prone to getting this fibromyalgia as time went on. Okay, so this is what a picture of what a normal neck should look like, okay? The front part here, this is the nose over here, and then the back of the head is over here. And you see this nice curvature that's going. That red line is the curvature or the formation that the spinal cord should be following. And you notice out here on the front that there's these disc spaces between the vertebra, and those should all be nice and equal in size. Really, a normal disc should be about half the size of the vertebra above or below it. So if you take one of those vertebrae, you cut it in half, that's about the size the disc should be. So this is a really nice looking normal spine. Now this is an abnormal spine. This is a spine that I usually, see somewhere in between normal and this one, or even worse, is where fibromyalgia patients are. And if you look at this spinal cord, where the red line is where it used to be, and how nice and relaxed that was, and now you look at that black dotted line, and that shows you the spinal cord, and you can just see how much stretch there is there, how much tension is on that spinal cord. And the spinal cord is what the brain is using to be able to control your body. And if you think about your fibromyalgia, if you sit back and think, can you think of any system in your body that doesn't have a problem? Whether it's your heart or your lungs, or there's pain, or your GI tract, or your breathing, all these different systems that are out there in your immune system. With fibromyalgia, every one of those is affected. And then if you think back a little bit and you go, okay, what structure is there? What is there in my body that if it had a problem could cause a problem with every single system in my body? And the only thing that could do that is if you had a problem with your brain, where maybe you have, scarring in your brain, or you've had, something really weird with your brain. But most of the time, people have had all these things checked out. They've been checked for lupus and MS and all these things, but it's always negative. Because the problem isn't in your brain. Your brain is healthy, or trying to be healthy, and trying to send the input to your body, but it's getting blocked as that information is transferring through this spinal cord, where it's being stretched and it's being hyperexcited, and it's just, you're having these mechanical blocks that are going on. Now you'll notice too, in this second picture over here, you notice how the discs at the top look pretty good, those black areas, but down here at the bottom now, they're all squashed. Just like we said, as you lose that curvature, now it's going to start to degenerate and squash those discs, okay? So this now is the spinal cord of what's going on there. On the left-hand side, you'll see the spinal cord here, and then you see the nerve roots coming off that I'm kind of outlining there, and then here's the bone where they're going to go out through your spine. This one over here, this picture is when you have a curvature in your spine. The picture over here is when you don't have a curvature. So if you look at this nerve, look at how much slack there is in that nerve right there. See how it just kind of loops and it's super relaxed? All these nerve roots out here, that are going to form this, they're all relaxed. And if you look at the formation of a nerve, you have this strand that makes it, and this one, and this one, and this one, and they all bundle together to create this nerve. And these things might be, each one of those strands has a purpose. One might be motor function of your arm. One might be temperature control. One could be something to your immune. One could be telling your heart to beat. All these different things are controlled through these nerves, and they are all coming out on this same nerve. Now, if you look over here on the right-hand side, you see that, look at this nerve now, okay? You see how that is actually stretched and torqued around that bone right there? How much stretch and pull and torque is on that? And there's a tremendous amount of stretch there. And so as that is stretching, that's causing all of this dysfunction to happen in your nervous system. That's making it so your body just can't function correctly, okay? Now, there's one other thing I want to point out to you on this. And if you look over here in the good slide again of the good neck, you'll see all this black stuff all around here, okay? This is fluid. This is that cerebral spinal fluid that I was telling you about that bathes this and keeps it healthy and creates that protective barrier around it. Well, if you look over here to this one on the other side, you'll notice that there's none of that black stuff there. You don't see it. The nerves and stuff are so pulled and stretched that this leather sheath is actually butting up against that cord. And if you think about it like this, okay, if you take a piece of rubber tubing and you were to stretch that rubber tubing 28% longer, what does the inside diameter of that tube do? Well, it gets much, much smaller. And that's the same as this leather-like sheath, this dura mater is doing it. As this stretches, and it stretches this 28% longer, this sheath will suck right up against that spinal cord. And this is why all these different movements allow it so that this spinal cord is always getting that intermittent touch, that tick, tick, tick that keeps this autonomic nervous system that Dr. Carlson was talking about, keeps this always going. This is when I was talking to you about how you can't get to sleep and what's happening there. You also notice with your sleep that even once you get to sleep, you don't really stay asleep very deep. And when you wake up, even if you slept 4 to 6 hours, you wake up and you're completely exhausted still. And the reason for that is with this autonomic arousal that's always happening, as you turn your head, even when you're kind of asleep during the night and stuff, you're constantly keeping this aroused, so you never actually get into what's called stage 4 sleep. Stage 4 sleep is when your body heals. It's when your nervous system heals. Hormones are released. All this great stuff happens that revives your body. Well, you never actually get into that sleep because your autonomic nervous system is constantly bombarded all through the night. So you finally get to sleep. Maybe you're using drugs to get to sleep. You wake up in the morning and you're still completely exhausted. Okay, so I want to show you a few pre- and post x-rays of patient examples. There's something that in chiropractic research that's been used over the years. It's called an FIQ score. It's called a Functional Impact Questionnaire, and this has kind of been the gold standard for fibromyalgia research and determining how well something's working or isn't working, okay? And so that's rated, and there's a 0 to 100 scale where 0 would be no pain, 100% pain-free, where 100 would be very, very bad and very, unhealthy and a really bad fibromyalgia, okay? What I did when I started to do research with this is I went out and I stood in front of the post office, and I just randomly gave out 20 of these FIQs, and I asked people who were doing it, first I asked them, do you have fibromyalgia? If they said no, then I let them fill out this thing because I wanted to know what healthy, or people who considered themselves healthy, what they would score on this. And they averaged about a 13 when I did this. And so, in my opinion, anything around a 13, to make it easy, like a 15, that's a pretty normal function. When I take the FIQ score, I scored about a 15, okay? So that's just to help you put this into perspective. The other thing we measure on this is the amount of forward head posture that a person has. And we measure this in millimeters, and 25 millimeters equals an inch. And if you remember me talking about how as your head goes forward, we measure this because every inch that your head goes forward, it adds 10 pounds of weight. So if your head's an inch forward, that's like a 20 to 25 pound head that's hanging off your shoulders, stretching your muscles, stretching your spinal cord, causing the rest of your body to compensate, okay? One other thing that just comes to mind, because of lack of time to do the whole thing tonight, I'm just concentrating on the neck, but pretty much everything that I'm saying in the neck, you're supposed to have that same curvature in your lower back. And when you lose it in your neck, then usually your body will compensate and you'll lose that curve in your lower spine. And so most patients who have fibromyalgia, we have to work with them. We have to work on their neck and their lower back and the whole spine, because it all plays together, it all works together, and usually if you've got disc bulges in your neck, you've got them in your low back as well. And so we have to work on all of those things, okay? So here's a pre and post x-ray. You see here on the left how instead of a nice curvature, this person's straight and even headed forward. They're 39 millimeters forward. And we measure that by dropping this plumb line down off of here and measuring that distance, okay?